Okay. Okay. Well, hello. Welcome everyone to the Creative Nectar podcast. I am your co-host, Jenny Hahn.
And I'm Stephanie Gray.
Hi, Steph.
Hey,
Nice to
Jenny.
see you.
You too.
And hello to all of you who are joining. Thank you so much. Whether you are a returning listener or you're here for the first time, we welcome you. And today we are going to have a different format to our show. We are going to answer your questions that you've sent in. We've received a number of questions from our community, from our Soul Nectar community, and also just those of you who have emailed us from listening to the show with specific questions. So we are going to dive into answering those today. Are you
Yeah,
ready?
I am. I love questions because, it's different perspectives and different thoughts and feelings of people, that aren't just the two of us. So it's like,
Right.
I love it. I love, love, love it. So yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready
Yeah.
when you are.
Okay, great. Well, I think the way we'll work this today is Steph, if you want to read the questions and then we'll just take each one as it comes.
As it comes.
As
Okay.
it comes.
All right. So the first question is, what's the connection for you between process art and the art you sell, and how do you price the art? So
Great question.
I'm going to give
Yeah.
you that question first.
Well, yeah, what a great question, first of all. This is something that comes up a lot because when I first started, I started as a quote professional artist or art student. That's how I came to process art. And so when I first started, my art was very separate. It was like there were paintings I was making for the public, for public consumption, with mostly acrylics and at that time oil even. And then there was my process art, which was tempera paint on paper. I had these two separate bodies of work. But over the years, that those lines have blurred a bit. Definitely they have influenced each other in both directions, like going both ways. And there's even been examples of where one has completely influenced the other to the point where I'm thinking of one painting I did. I have this painting called Breakthrough, and it's a figure, like a silhouette of a seated meditating figure. And at the top, there's this line coming, dotted line going up through the center of the body, up through the chakras, and out the top of the head. And there's this dog running, because at the top of the head is the ground, and then there's this dog running. And Steph, you're smiling. I know you have seen this painting, and it's actually in one of my oracle decks now. That painting started as a process painting. And it was a day that my dog had gotten out and my beagle I used to have, and I chased him down. And and then I went to a workshop and then I made that painting. And it was me just like processing that, but it was also this symbol of like freedom and breaking through to the next level and those sort of ideas. Well, I ended up repainting that into one of my studio pieces. So I have the old process painting and I have the studio piece, which has since sold, which I've sold many prints of, and of course, like I said, is on the cards now. So there's definitely influence both ways for me. But I'm curious about you, Steph, because you also create paintings to sell, and I'm curious, like, where's that crossover for you?
Well, um, it's less so because I'm not a trained artist. I come about painting more from just this experience of where I am in my body and what I'm feeling and how I am. Recently I've been doing something totally different, something called frequency paintings, and that's more
Yes.
abstract and more using like words and frequency to create a desired effect when the viewer is looking at the painting. But I have sold some of my process work in collaboration with other artists. So like we have journals and t-shirts and stuff that like a couple of my
Mm,
characters, like my little beings that come through in some of my journals that I did in process art, I collaborated with another artist friend of mine, and then we sell those. So,
mm.
but it happened. I wasn't thinking about selling them when I made them.
Right.
They just
That's
became
exactly.
something else. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I wanted to speak to. As you were talking, I realized, oh, I want to be really clear on something though. I've never, yeah, I don't think either of us have ever approached process work with the idea that we could turn this into something
Mm-mm.
as a commodity, as a product. And that's a huge distinction for me when you think about regular artwork versus art for process is the intent behind it, the intent for its creation. The creation is always for its own sake and for whatever it is we're needing in that moment. And I have had moments where I'm making process art and I'll think, ooh, this is really cool. I could make this into that. And always, if I have that thought, it's like that's where I am bound to hit a block and get
Absolutely.
stuck.
That's absolutely correct. And I would just 100% just say what you just said. There'd be no
Yeah.
way I could do process art with the idea of this is going to turn into something. Because then it's
Yeah.
not process art.
Then it's not, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Then it suddenly becomes for product.
Yeah.
And it does shift the energy of it.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I'll just ask the last of this question is how do you price your art? I'll just say for me, it's
Yeah.
just I do it from the heart, which is not a great business model, but there's that.
Whatever works for you. And there are so many ways to go about this. I mean, I know artists who base it on size, I know artists who base it on time. I myself, this is such a weird topic to begin with. Like this whole idea of art as a commodity, I've always struggled with it, even as a professional artist. You know, how do you charge? How do you price for something that came through you, came from your soul, that will never exist again? And I still struggle. But all that being said, I use a combination. I suggest looking at the pricing that other artists kind of in your range, so to speak, are charging. Like, what is sort of the going rate for whatever it is? Like somebody who's maybe been creating as long as you have, maybe somebody that has similar. I mean, this is all subjective too. But I look at that and then I look at size of the piece for me. So I have kind of a set amount based on like the size of the canvas. And that can shift a little bit too, because there's some I might do really quickly and there's some I might work on for months, even years sometimes, coming back to again and again. So with anything, it is subjective, but I recommend kind of those two things of looking at the market and then looking at the size or involvement of each piece. How about you,
Yeah.
Steph? Well, you already said, yeah,
Yeah,
from
I
the
just
heart,
from the heart.
which is also
From the
which is
heart.
also completely valid. I will add one more piece of advice here for those of you who are looking to be professional artists, want to sell your art in the market, as a commodity. I recommend always keeping your prices the same, no matter who, no matter where you're selling it. So, for instance, rather than, because keep in mind, if you sell through a gallery or something like that, they will take anywhere from usually 50%, but if you're lucky, anywhere from 20 to 50% commission. Some people like will tack on their price to make up for that. I don't recommend that. I always keep my prices the same. And then if I sell to somebody directly, it's like an added bonus.
Hmm.
Like that's, and you can also add, offer discounts to people or to your patrons, to your followers. But I recommend keeping your price the same no matter where you sell.
Cool.
So that's a little different subject for us here, for those of you who usually join us just for process art. So a little bit of art selling tips.
All right. Well,
What else do we have?
we'll take another one here. This is more about the process art. The question is,
Right.
what's the difference between art journaling and process art for healing and self-connection?
Mm. Do you want to take that first?
Sure. For me, I think it just depends on the intention. I think it depends on the intention of
Yeah.
your journal, or for I work in altered books, but it's basically the same thing because it's page by page, right? Um, for me, I always use the situation as it's just for me. No one's going to see it but me. Um, the pages can hold anything, and that's what I would
Right.
consider to be process art versus I have this journal, but I am going to sell it or I'm going to make it visible for other people. Um, Not to say I don't share some of my pages because I absolutely do on social media, but I don't do it with
Right.
that intention. And I I just think again, it just goes all the way back to intention.
Yes.
Yeah. What
100%.
yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like there's a lot of ways to approach an art journal, and there's a lot of classes and workshops and videos out there. There's a lot of different techniques. And if you're just wanting to explore different techniques, that's great. That's great. Maybe exploring patterns or exploring collage or jelly printing or all these different like ways to like that is a form of play, and that also can be process, and that exploration can be process art. But when I think of like process art as we often talk about it here, to me that's taking it even deeper than the surface level play, which is often the entry point. But as you were saying earlier, Steph, like tuning into your body, to your heart, to what is most needing expression in this moment can take it even deeper and can take us on a transformative process, take us almost on a journey
Mhm.
through our own growth and the growth of the piece. So, so I guess that's to say that like art journaling can be that, and it also can just be making beautiful pictures. And there's nothing wrong with either, but it's kind of like the spectrum of how deep do you want to go with it?
I think that's absolutely right. Is it going to be about self-discovery and what's coming up as I'm doing this, or is it just going to be, like you said, something beautiful, which is absolutely valid and fine too.
Yeah, and sometimes it shifts from day to day. Like in my art books and journals, like there's some where it's just about mark making and it's just about play and experimentation, and that's wonderful. And then there's some where it does take me on a journey. Like I have some big stuff come up that I work through, maybe healing from the past, maybe something in my psyche, maybe something I'm holding in my body. So it's not to say that one is better than the other, but just like you said, the intent and how far do you go with it? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Beautifully said.
cool.
Okay. Here's one we can answer. What do I do with my completed process art that is piling up? It's a good question. What do you
It's
do
a
with
great
yours?
question. I'm laughing because I have maybe four huge boxes. And I'm laughing because every time I move, that is the question. And I share this in my book in Creative Flow that there was a time where I actually went through all of them. I photographed all 400 large paintings that I had been moving around over the years, And that's actually part of what became the Oracle decks and such. Again, without the intention at the time. But yeah, I I recommend somehow still, even if you don't want to hold on to the physical paintings or pieces or books, whatever they are, to at least document them. Like take a digital photo. I recommend like starting not a gallery, but a folder or some sort of archive, some sort of database for yourself, because you never know how these things end up coming back. And to me, they're like visual journals. And I can look back and see, oh, yeah, I remember when I was going through that challenge. Or, oh, wow, look at how much I've grown since that. To me, that's important. It may not be important to everyone. And we certainly have people in our workshops who it's about the experience, it's about the release, and then they want, they choose to ceremonially destroy the piece. And that's fine too. But a lot of people will take a photo first, some sort of digital record. So that's my recommendation. And if you have the space for it, then I don't know what I'm going to do with my original pieces, eventually. But, you could also make them into something else, use them as collage for a new piece. Make somebody cut theirs up and turn it into a greeting card they gave me for my birthday of theirs. You can use it as wrapping paper. I don't know, just there's so many ways you can use it, but I do recommend, yeah, keeping a record.
I
How about
love
you,
that.
Steph?
I would say that no matter what you do, just check in with yourself and take care. Like you were saying, like
Mm,
document it, or for me, I kept all of them. And then I had to keep some of them in a back room that then flooded. And so many of my process paintings were destroyed, which got me to this point of sort of acceptance and surrender too, of like, okay, I don't have to keep them, but what could I do to honor what was birthed, in the like what they're babies to me, like, and it was a process and
mm,
it was a whole situation, like you said, like visual journals. And so there were some that I got rid of, but I did it, like you were saying, in a ceremonial way. I cut them up, I burned them. Like there was a whole ceremony to it. So it wasn't just throwing them out, like discarding them, like, oh, I don't want to see that.
right,
I don't
right.
like that. It was more of really honoring and integrating and then letting it go, not necessarily having the physical item anymore. So
Mm,
totally up to you, but just honoring where you were and and how you put that onto the page, I think is important.
yeah. I love how you made that distinction between releasing it consciously versus just throwing it in the trash.
Yeah, because
Huge difference.
I've seen that in workshops and it's just like,
Yeah.
it hurts my heart.
Yes. Well, and I actually have maybe I'm a hoarder. I don't know. I actually have a collection here of paintings that people have either left behind at a workshop or thrown into the trash. And it's like, yeah, and I see like so much in them that I do have a pile here. I hate to admit, but I have a pile here of paintings from and I don't even know who they were from anymore. Like years of them, but they're so special.
Yeah,
They're so powerful to look at.
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So yeah, in essence, yeah, up to you, but do it, whatever you do, do it consciously and with intention.
All right, let's move to the next one so that we have time for as many as
Oh
possible.
yes, let's do
Okay,
it.
so the next one is how can I use process art with internal family systems work? That's a that
Ooh,
that's a
yeah.
great question.
That is such a great question.
And I wonder
Uh,
before we start, Jenny, did you have a quick like definition of what that is?
yeah, yeah. And I am by no means an expert on this. I have not done much practice with it, but I've heard it talked about at some of our gatherings. People have brought it up. on the website, it says, or maybe this was from Wikipedia, I can't remember, but it said that internal family systems work is a form of psychotherapy that identifies and addresses multiple sub-personalities or families within each person's mental system. So, for instance, you might have different parts, as I referred to, within your own psyche. So maybe there's an inner child who's hurt. Maybe there's a caring parent. Maybe there's an authoritarian voice or parent. Maybe there's, and I know I can relate to this a lot. I had never even heard of that term until just the last year or two ago. And yet I can look at my paintings, my process work, and it's like, oh yeah, it's all about that. Because when we show up to the page in this way, without a plan and without an agenda, I feel like we're inviting this ground for returning to wholeness in ourselves, returning to wholeness in our psyche. And so, yes, for me, those different parts have absolutely shown up, especially the little child me or inner child or baby, infant me that was needing some reparenting and some healing and some reclaiming. So yes, there are different characters that have shown up in my paintings that you could absolutely interpret as being different parts of my own internal system. Although we don't typically encourage analyzing our pieces in that way, like psychoanalyzing it, but yeah, there's that element has definitely been there. How about for you, Steph?
Oh, when I first found out about it, I'm like, oh, yeah, I've been doing that for years intuitively. And
Yeah.
all it is for me, it's like leaning in and getting curious about the voices that I hear as I'm painting, oh, that's not going to
Yes.
look good. Well, who's saying that? Who's the critic behind that? And then it could be my mother, or I have I have painted a lot of different parts of me, the child, but also
Yes.
the mother wound, and the interaction between the child and the mother, and all there. So much has happened on the page. So I would say this would be a beautiful marriage. And if you're working in that style with your therapist and you're doing process art, I mean, I just feel like that would be
Yes.
a winning combination. Yeah, I wholeheartedly would
Yeah,
recommend that. Yeah, because,
absolutely.
yeah, it's powerful.
Absolutely. And I know that when I was in therapy, I was bringing some of my paintings to my therapist. And there's been many people in our workshops that have ended up taking their pieces to their therapist as well. So even if their therapist isn't specifically talking about internal family systems work, like it's all, yeah, it's just rich for that kind of healing work and integration and wholeness work.
hmm Yeah, it's
Yeah.
calling those parts of ourselves back home. And there's really
Yes.
something that happens, for me at least, when you can visually see and get that out onto a page, and then do something also through the creative process to sort of call that piece back home to you too. It's a very
Yes.
magical thing that happens. And I think we talk about this in one of our older podcasts. I think it's like the healing one, perhaps, or I would have to see, but we
Hmm.
definitely talk about
Maybe.
this. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because I don't know, I might have given the example, but this little monster child that is something that shows up for me a lot. There's something therapeutic about letting that be seen and letting her speak her needs, but then that bringing in that hand or that arm of that divine being, that mothering quality or whatever that when you were just saying that stuff, that's what it made me think of. Not to leave it at just the one, but then that bringing in, that calling in what it's needing in that moment is so powerful. Can be
Yeah.
so healing.
It's really helped me
Yeah,
to integrate things 100%. And it will
yeah,
continue to do so, I'm sure.
yeah,
Yeah, that was a
yeah,
great question.
yeah. Really good one. What
Let's
else?
see. I think we have time for one or two more, would be my guess.
Great.
So this one is picking out different medias to expand the imagination. So I guess it's sort of like so we talk a lot here about process painting, but but process art is just an extension of the painting. So I guess I can talk about my own experience with this, and then Jenny, if you can run with it however you want. But
Yeah.
so I was strictly process painter for a few decades, and then started working smaller in altered books and began to use collage, which for me opened up an entirely new world because there was always this
Mm.
struggle of me not knowing how to create exactly how I was feeling. So let's say that I approached the page and I was feeling very shut down and very scared or whatever. And my body language would be, I'd want to put that on the painting, on the page. The first thing is like maybe this hunched over figure or whatever. And I wouldn't know how. And so I would do it and it would be okay, right? And I would honor that and whatever, and it would be fine. But when I was able to use collage and I found an image
Mm.
exactly that sort of brought my heart and my soul and my feeling of what was going on in the moment on the page immediately, and then I could work with that from there.
Yes.
It opened up a whole new world. And then as I used collage, it burst open my imagination of these different realms
Mm.
and like little fairy realms sometimes. And then it just became joyous, it really, I really appreciate more materials and mediums and stuff like that at this point in my
Mm.
process art game. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah, beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I definitely am primarily a painter, so that's my main medium. However, since working in an altered book, kind of as you said, I have incorporated more collage and that sort of thing, and drawing materials. And I want to say here that it doesn't even have to be limited to 2D either.
Yeah.
Like you can work three-dimensionally for process. I've done a little bit of clay work, not a lot, but that was fun too. And even if you had some Play-Doh or some Sculpey or something, to bring that same spirit of exploration and play, and also tuning into your body, seeing what's most wanting to express right now, and even allowing for that deep exploration and excavation of the psyche and of all of it. I mean, it's not limited to materials. Like we come from process painting. And I was already a painter, and that's sort of like our jam. I love how paints flow. I love the flow of it. I love how it kind of mimics the emotional states of
Mhm.
like this fluidity. But it's not for everyone, like not everyone's favorite. So we encourage you to explore with different materials and see what works best for you. Everybody has like their favorite.
And that's the thing too, right? I mean, that is part of process art is figuring out
Oops.
what is yours. Like what makes my heart sing? What lights me up? What do I have the most interest or juice for? And it's going to be different for every single
Yes.
person. So, like you said, experiment, get curious.
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay,
Do we have
we
one
have,
more?
well, yes, it wasn't, I'm not sure about the question and how they wanted to word it, but it was creativity through suffering. It was more of like a topic. So maybe we could
Okay.
just touch on that, and also to say that we've probably done one or two past podcasts where we talk about this and touch on that. But
Yes.
when I hear creativity through suffering, I I have this thought of that I used to think was a reality, which is in order to be a really good artist, I needed to be a suffering artist, which
Mm.
I don't believe that as much anymore. Because there's also so much joy that can come through too. However, I will also
Yeah.
say that as someone who is deals with chronic illness, chronic pain from time to time, chronically. Um, Creativity has helped me through that and helps me through bouts of when I go into a flare of processing that and
Yeah.
working with it and talking to my pain and all of that. So that's
Yes.
definitely a thing too. And I don't know if that's what you wanted us to touch on, but that's what I got with that. Jenny?
Yeah, when I first read that, what I thought they were asking was how to use creativity to alleviate their suffering. But I also see how they could have meant, yeah, creativity, is that a doorway? Do you have to suffer in order to create? So yeah, to address both, like for one, to reference some of our earlier shows again, if it's how to use creativity to meet suffering and let's say pain, we do talk about that in the episode on art, on healing, art making and healing, which you might want to check out if you haven't listened to it yet. And we touched on this actually in a lot of our shows, but yeah, I definitely think creative expression is a readily available tool when we are suffering,
Mm,
for sure. And that
mhm,
sometimes we don't engage it until we are suffering, until we don't know what else to do. Because art making can inherently be scary or be can bring up fears of rejection or comparison or not good enough, all that stuff. Sometimes, we only go to it when we're in that place of like, no, I have to do this.
mm.
So that could be one way that suffering could bring us more into our creativity. And certainly, there's been many artists throughout history that have suffered greatly and have been very creative. However, I do not think it's a prerequisite. I think that being centered in our joy and our wholeness and our abundance and our just absolute bliss, that also can allow a natural bubbling up of creativity. So it can be either. I don't think it's dependent on suffering. And then to answer the flip side of that, it absolutely is and can be a tool when we are.
Oh yeah.
And again, that's one of our very common topics here. So I'm not sure what listener what your intent with the question, which direction that was, but hopefully that addresses it.
Yeah. And if not, ask us another question. Like, yeah,
Yes.
I think that particular person is in our community, so our online community, hopefully. So if we didn't get that
Yeah.
answered, hit us up. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Great
Yeah.
questions.
Thank you all
I
so
love
much.
it.
Yeah, me
Yeah.
too. Me too.
Yeah. And keep them coming too. We love to answer your questions through our online community, the Soul Nectar community. If you're not in it yet, please join. We have the free tier now, our private Facebook group. So much great discussion and sharing in there and community. So please join us there.
Yeah. Yeah. We would love to see you there. So, along that vein, we have decided that we are going to put the podcast on a bit of a hiatus. We are going to follow our heart and our interest, like follow the curiosity, follow that thread of what is up for us and what is the juiciest thing for us. And right now, it is building that online community,
Yes.
building workshops, building just ways to connect with others and ways to bring this to folks in a very visceral way, however that looks, however we can do that online and in person, but really online
Yeah.
is what we're hoping to continue to build. So we are going to put this on
Yes.
a hiatus. That doesn't mean that we won't come back to it. It doesn't mean that we won't refer to some of the episodes. It just means that we've got to go. We've got to go where our heart's going.
We got to follow where the juice is.
Yeah.
And just like we would at our painting, we talk
Hmm.
about this in process art. Like yeah, you've got to follow your energy. And right now our energy is really calling us toward, like you said, Steph, building out more of those classes, really creating opportunities for community and to practice together. So
Yeah.
yeah. And we'll see. We might get drawn back to this soon, or we'll just see what wants to happen, just
Yeah,
like in a process painting. What wants
exactly.
to happen next?
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you, listener, for coming along with us, and we'll see you again, hopefully, and you'll hear from us in all the ways because we're not going anywhere. We're just switching platforms for the moment, and we hope to see you in our community one way or another. So definitely check that out. You can go to creativenectarstudio.com to check out all the options that we have in person and online.
Yes, creativenectarstudio.com. And join us for our online community. And yes, we will see you when we see you.
Yeah.
And until then, be well and keep creating.
Yeah. Take good care.
Thanks for listening.